This does not seem to be the case. It seems that there's people that God seems to favor and people that God seems to not favor. There are people born in very good circumstances. They might have been born into a wealthy family, have lots of intelligence or beauty or some other opulence. And then people who are born into very bad situations. Whether they're born into an abusive family or with birth defects, or don't have beauty or intelligence or something like that. And it seems that life is just unfair. And this is actually, one of the arguments that the atheists use against the theists. Well, they say, why would God condemn one person to a life of suffering, and another person to a life of enjoyment? This is sometimes called, especially in Western philosophy, the problem of evil. If God is all good, all knowing, all powerful, why do bad things happen? Why aren't we all just, some idyllic situation? And of course, the answer is the laws of karma, that actually we are the cause of our own happiness and distress. And it might appear unjust, but that's because we don't have the full picture. Uh, it's just like if you were walking along, the road and are going through some town and you come across somebody being hanged, right? So you see that, there's a mob of people and they're about to hang somebody. How would you respond if you saw this happening?
Frightful. Probably want to do something about it.
Yeah, you did, want to try to stop them. You might at least say, like, hey, like, what are you doing to this person? Why, like, don't kill this person. But then they say to you, this person, he murdered his neighbor to take his land. In cold blood, he planned it out. It wasn't a crime of passion. He just calculated that he wanted something that belonged to his neighbor, so he killed him. Then you might say, well, yeah, he might deserve to be hanged, right? Just because you weren't it seemed unjust when you were first looking. That's just because you weren't in the courtroom when the decision was being made. And likewise, the decisions are whether made on everybody's karma. And whether we were in the courtroom or not doesn't change the fact that if it was just or not. And you actually have to have this understanding uh, in order to see that God is equal to all. Because uh, if you don't have this understanding, it can, you basically, if you don't accept reincarnation, you have to accept that God is more favorable to some people than to others. And that's actually a very mm, subtle point about this equality of God. Actually, at first, Maharaj Parikshit even couldn't understand it. At the end of the sixth canto that we're about to reach, he actually asks, it seems that Vishnu, Krishna, is favorable towards the demigods and not towards the demons. That he seems to like the sons of Aditi more than the sons of Diti. He's always coming down and killing the sons of Diti for the sons of Aditi. So this point of uh, God being equal to everybody is actually a very subtle one. And unless you accept reincarnation, you can't actually grasp it. Because if you think that this one life is all that there is, then the living entities have no past actions in order to be judged for. And then it is just totally random. That, God chooses one soul randomly in order to be, born with birth defects, and another soul randomly to be born, with a very beautiful body or high intelligence or something like that. And actually, it gets, in one sense, even worse if if your version of God is exclusivist, in the sense that you go to heaven forever if you believe the right thing, and go to hell forever if you believe the wrong thing. Because if you believe that, then you might be forced to come to the conclusion that God likes Guatemalans, for example, more than he likes Saudi Arabians, right? Because Guatemalans are extremely Christian country. Saudi Arabia is an extremely Muslim country. According to one view, all the Saudi Arabians, more or less, are going to hell because of where they were born, and all the Guatemalans are going to heaven. Of course, if you believe another exclusivist religion, then it's completely reversed. And God likes the Saudi Arabians and hates the Guatemalans. Uh, because, in that view, you only have one life to live, and there's no trying again and again to come closer to God. You have kind of the world's most high stake history test. Uh, and if you pass it, then you get to, as they say, enjoy God. Note, not be enjoyed by God. And if you fail it, then hellfire forever. So this is actually why the first thing that Krishna teaches Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is, I had previous incarnations. You were born before. All of these kings were born before. There's never a time that they did not exist, and there's never a time that they will not exist. Because the basics of the spiritual science is this idea of reincarnation and karma. Because as I was saying, if you don't accept it, then you have to have a very strange view of God, that he just likes certain people for no reason and dislikes certain people for no reason. When the actual point is that he is equal to everybody. There's nobody that is especially dear to him, and nobody that he is especially inimical to. And this is related to the fact that he does not have a material body. Uh, this point is brought up, as I was saying, at the uh, end of the sixth canto, or the beginning of the seventh canto, I guess, where Maharaj Parikshit asks about this point of friendship and enmity. That does Vishnu favor the demigods over the demons? Are the sons of Aditi more dear to him than the sons of Diti? And Shukadev Goswami responds by telling a story of Vishnu uh, ripping one of the sons of Diti in half, which seems an odd choice given the point that he's trying to make. Of course, he's telling the story of uh, Hiranyakashipu being killed by Lord Nrsingadev. Uh, which, if you're trying to say that, Vishnu doesn't have a thing against the demons, is an odd story, might be an odd story to tell. But of course, uh, Lod is also the son or a descendant of Aditi. It's one of the Daitas. And he is very dear to Lord Nrsingadev. So it does make the point. But it also makes the point that the Lord has no material body. Because why do friendship and enmity uh, come about? And it is because we misidentify with the material body, either the gross or subtle material body. And that we find that those who help our sense gratification are our friends, and those who block our sense gratification are our enemies. And then we act on this platform of that once we have this idea of friends and enemies, we have the uh, idea of acting favorably or unfavorably towards others. Now, I'll act favorably towards my friends and unfavorably towards my enemies. But actually, this state of being a friend or enemy on the material platform, it's very unstable, like everything is on the material platform, uh, because it changes, you know, very quickly, practically, from one day to the next. That uh, okay, yesterday you were my friend, and but then you said something mean to me, or I don't know, stole the last piece of pizza or something, and then now I hate you, and now you're my enemy, and then likewise, you were my enemy, but then you did something nice for me, and then you're my friend, because the modes of nature are always changing. And it is because of these three modes of nature that intervene, to use the term that Prabhupada used, with our eternal relationship, that the various material relationships appear. And this idea of enmity gets extended. First, we have it in interpersonal relationships, just one person to another. But then it extends, to family, country, race, religion, whatever material identification that we have. And then the idea of friends and enemies uh, become becomes more pronounced, and that is the cause of wars, oppressions, etc. This idea of this group is against my group that I identify, uh, say as uh, an Indian or an Israeli or something. So then I view Pakistanis or Palestinians or some other group as against me. But of course, what we think of throughout our life and at the time of death uh, influences what we become in our next life, if we are lucky enough to get a human birth. Um, so, if I'm, say, an Indian who thinks, who's always meditating on Pakistan and, how dastardly they are, then there's every chance that I might be born as a Pakistani in my next life. And then my um, idea of partiality and enmity uh, is flipped. That Now who I thought was the enemy is now my friend, and who I thought was my friend is now my enemy. But the basic mentality is the same of friends and enemies. And this can even extend to the idea of, uh, or with our relationship with the Supreme Lord, with our idea of God in general, or specifically Vishnu or Krishna or any one of the incarnations. We see this a lot of people seeming to have a chip on their shoulder about God. A lot of times um, you meet people who they don't necessarily even have any sort of rational argument for why they disbelieve in God. So, of course, the proof of God is very obvious. Um, but they have some sort of enmity. It's an emotional reaction. Prabhupada was actually asked about something like this one time, where he was asked about the sincere atheists. Uh, you know, so I said, okay, Prabhupada, you talk about atheists. What about the sincere atheists? Do you know what his response was?
Um,
There is no such thing as a sincere atheist. Uh, because the proof of God's existence um, is so clear that the only reason to disbelieve is because you're committed to disbelieving. You have an ulterior motive, so to speak, because you don't, basically, because you don't want to accept the supremacy of the Lord over yourself. And even with specific forms of the Lord, uh, people develop enmity based on their ideas brought about by the three modes of nature. And this is different for people in different modes. For example, when the British first came to India, and of course, they didn't really like Indian culture so much. They tried to destroy it. But comparatively, they liked Lord Ramchandra better than they liked Krishna. So, they're very like, Victorian and stuffy and all of those things. So like, oh, Lord Ram, he's all about duty and, always doing the right thing, very proper and all of this. Uh, while they didn't so much appreciate Krishna. He just dances in the forest and, does whatever he wants all day and, uh, things like that. While, of course, nowadays, for a lot of people, it's reversed. People like Krishna because he's very free flowing and doesn't let the rules and restrictions bring him down. While Lord Ram is like, oh, why does Lord Ram have to always do like this, like this? It's always telling to do the right thing, stuff like that. We haven't heard people criticize, even people from India. When I was in grad school, there was a uh, person who was a few years below me from Gujarat. And she saw, one time when I went into the office, that I had neck beads on, and it's like, oh, are you a Hare Krishna? And I was like, oh, yeah, I am. And basically, the first thing that she said to me is, oh, yeah, yeah, I know ISKCON, but I don't like Ram and Krishna. Uh, which is, I was surprised because generally Indians, they at least, even if they aren't so big believers, just because of the culture, they like. But she said, "Well, I don't like that Ram sent Sita to the forest, and that Krishna stole the clothes of the gopis, because this is anti-feminist, apparently." Uh, so all of these ideas, these modes of nature, enter in to our relationship with the Lord. And we think that the Lord is under the control of the illusory energy. Oh, Ram, he's just, some, uh, patriarchal person. They're actually people who have reinterpreted the Ramayana to cast Ram in this light. That, oh, Ram is just some misogynist and he doesn't like, he wants to send Sita to the forest and it's just like a trophy sort of thing. Or Krishna is just a lusty person. And these ideas are born because we think Krishna is like us, that Krishna, in its various incarnations, has friends and enemies, that there are things that he can, there are things that he does in order to gratify his own senses, and that includes liking some people more than others. But Krishna not only has unlimited desires, but has the unlimited ability to fulfill those desires. Krishna, unlike us, does not have to go outside himself to fulfill his desires, because he is the source of all creation, of all reality, that he doesn't need anybody else in order to feel satisfied. An example of this is the pastime between Kamadev, or Cupid, and Narayan Rishi. Are you familiar with that pastime? So, Kamadev, well, I'll start. Narayan Rishi is an incarnation of Vishnu who performs, austerities, meditations, things like that. One of the things that Kamadev does is disturb sages who are trying to meditate. Uh, you know, typically by sending them beautiful women to distract them. And he tried this one time with Narayan Rishi. And, he manifested all these beautiful women. And Narayan Rishi saw and was like, oh, you like beautiful women? Here, I'll manifest some more. Uh, and, of course, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so the women that he manifested were far more beautiful than the one that even Kamadev could manifest. He was totally undisturbed, uh, pointing out that he doesn't need anything outside himself in order to um, actually be satisfied, because he can manifest anything that he wants. So there's no question then of friends and as people who help you fulfill your sense gratification, and enemies, people who are against your sense gratification, because there is no question of being stopped in a sense gratification. So then, how do we understand the pastimes, such as uh, the one coming up in the seventh canto, the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev to kill Hiranyakashipu? Because it seems that uh, he does favor certain people more than others. But we should understand that he is simply responding to the devotion, to the attitude of the living entity. That if the living entity sees Krishna as his enemy, then Krishna may come as his enemy, split him in half. Uh, but if one comes as a devotee, as his friend, then that is the way that Krishna will respond. Everyone is following Krishna's path one way or another, but one should follow it favorably. And actually, being killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also good for the living entity. That one, at the very least, gets liberation. uh, if not, like Putana and others, spot in the spiritual world. So we should understand that the Lord is, as Prabhupada puts it, the friendly super self. The friend is the well-wisher of all living entities. And it is actually just our own contact with the illusory energy of the Lord that makes us think that there is such a thing as friends and enemies, not only in relationship to the Lord, but in relationship to everyone else as well. Because we should not see anybody as a friend or an enemy, just as servants of Krishna that are covered over to different degrees by his illusory energy, and then act ourselves as well as the well-wisher of all living entities, not on the material platform, but by trying to spread the glories of Krishna, to spread Krishna consciousness to everyone. And in this way, we will also please the Supreme Lord and make spiritual advancement ourselves. And then everything, both material and spiritual, will be improved on this planet, other planets, all universes, etc. So we have about 17 minutes left. I'll end here. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, there's a lot to chew on.
Hmm,
I really appreciate it. I appreciated the point of how like God's chosen people is such a toxic like mentality,
hmm,
and how it's so prevalent. And I guess my question is, how do you not get like frustrated at Christians who come at everything that's many religions, but I was raised Christian,
hmm,
and around age like 13 or 14, like the philosophy just didn't hold up for me.
yeah.
I had too many questions, and I was told just have faith, and I was over it. And so how do you just not get frustrated at people for having these like strange toxic philosophies?
So the question is, on this point of exclusivist religions, how do you not get frustrated by people who have these philosophies that don't really hold up and have uh, bad implications, let's say? Uh, I mean, really, there's only so many things to be frustrated about, right? You can see that these people are, mm, so there's always different ways that you can look at a situation, right? You could see like, oh, these people are, preaching this philosophy that's bad. Or you could look at the other side because there is, like it might be very hidden, especially in some people, but there is a core of bhakti in all of these religions. Right? Jesus, we accept as a Shakti avatar. He's a pure devotee that came down from the spiritual world to preach bhakti yoga. Of course, what happened in the intervening centuries might be something else, but there's still the core there. You can say, okay, they're uh, approaching God somehow. And also, they might just be naive, right? So, we understand that the world is divided into there are the devotees, there are the demons, and then there's the naive. The naive just follow whoever's in charge. So it's not always that people who espouse these various philosophies, whether it's one of these exclusivist religions or even just pure atheism, are these big demons or whatever. They might just be confused. And it's very easy to be confused in this day and age because there's a general lack of spiritual knowledge. So, you can just, instead of just, becoming frustrated, you can try to explain to them. You know, why, why would God, say you're a raised Christian, so I'll use the Christian example. Why would God like Guatemalans or El Salvadorians or Americans or whatever more than, Saudi Arabians or Indians or, uh, Japanese people or whatever.
Y- Yeah, I was just when you were speaking, I was thinking about this phrase my mom always told me growing up, which is you can't argue with an idiot. So how would you throw that?
Yeah, I mean, that is a wise saying, and you can't argue with an idiot. Um, but yeah, like it's not that everybody. So I don't know. Have you ever done book distribution?
A few times.
A few times. So for a few years, I was 6 hours a day book distribution, 6 days a week. And the thing is, you learn very quickly. You can't convince everybody to take a book. So sometimes you have to uh, cut your losses, so to speak. You just have to say, like, okay, I'm reaching the people that are open to being reached. Remember one time, I was on this, I was in Old City, Philadelphia, uh, with, um, this devotee who was visiting us for a while. He lives in Atlanta now. And, he started talking with somebody. And, it was like noon or 1 o'clock or something. So I was saying, okay, I'm going to go take lunch. I said to him, like, hey, bro, I'm just going to go, like, sit in the park over there and eat my lunch. He's like, oh, okay. And he was talking with this Christian person. And then I eat my lunch and it's like, 20 minutes later, 15, 20 minutes later or something. I come back and he's still talking with the same person. So, it's clear that this person isn't going to take a book. Because if he was going to take a book, he would have taken it,
The
20
person
minutes
has
ago.
to like save him. But then I think like isn't that what faith
So, I mean,
is?
yeah, by the way, the way that I handled it, so I don't know if people want to hear the end of the story, was that, I walked up to, the Christian who was talking to him and I said, oh, wow, it's great. You're going to take a book. Uh, these are such great books, as you're very lucky to be getting one. It's like, oh, no, no, I don't know if I'm going to take it. I was like, oh, why not? Why aren't you going to take a book? It's like, oh, well, this and that. So, oh, well, you've been talking, you understand the philosophy now, you should take a book. And it's like, oh, no, 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 I have to go, I have to go. So, and then on the other, but yeah, it's nice to talk to people, but on the other hand, in that 20 minutes, how many books could you have distributed to people who are actually going to read them and understand them? So yeah, like the it kind of comes down to you have to know kind of when you're fighting a losing battle. So you have to understand also what you're capable of, as in, who you can argue against and not argue against, and how good you are at arguing. And then also if the person is open to being convinced. Because, Prabhupada gives, this story, parable, you could say, of two people who are trying to cut something. Have you heard this one? So these two people are trying to cut something. They're arguing over whether to cut it with a knife or scissors. And one person says, knife, 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 knife. The other person says, no, we should cut it with scissors. We should cut it with scissors. And they're arguing and arguing, and soon it gets violent. So the knife guy, he knows that the other guy can't swim. So he takes him and throws him in the river. And as the guy is drowning, he reaches his hand up over the water and goes like this, saying scissors. So and the point is that if somebody is convinced to not be convinced, there's nothing you can do, even to the point of death, to convince them. So yeah, so you can just say, okay, these people have their religion. I've told them about Krishna. They've at least heard the name. And if they aren't, maybe in their future in this life, They'll be more open to be convinced. And if not, it's always there's always their next life, right? So, uh, it's not like if we don't get them this life, they're going to hell forever or something. We'll get them next time around.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I would just wanted to ask, when you have book distribution,
Hmm?
uh, should you should force people to force, like, in a very subtle way, force for the books. Of course, convincing is one thing, but the forcing is that uh, is that you know telling something which is probably not right and try to uh,
Like, what do you mean? Like, we shouldn't lie to sell the books.
yeah, not
Like, I don't know if
force.
that's what you're asking.
You're trying to force somebody.
What do you mean by force?
A force is, for example, um, like like we already, for example, I'll give an example within the devotee groups as well. There are some devotees who has got the books, right? If they have got Srimad Bhagavatam, they have got Chaitanya Charitamrita, they have got some other books as well, and some new set of books comes in.
Hmm?
Then the challenge is that other person is saying, I have not got a chance to even read what books I have got. Then if I'm gonna take more, they're saying practically, then we're like I don't like, let me finish what books I have got it first before I take up any other books. So in that situation, how do we handle
Yeah, I mean, if like even having the books is auspicious,
mm,
so like yeah, you can try to convince people to take more books. Like, I mean, I guess like the thing is whether you're on the street or among devotees, it's not like you're holding a gun to somebody's head and saying like you have to take the book, right? You convince by argument, right? Or persuasion or something, right? It's not, when I was, on the streets doing books, it's not like, oh, I'm not even saying like, you have to take this book or you're going to go to hell, right? It's like, you take this book and it'll benefit you, right, in some way, depending on what, they're into. Like, oh, it's about yoga and meditation. It'll help you, be more relaxed, or, this is a book about God, or, you know, this is a very, scholarly version of the Bhagavad Gita, or depending on what it is, but it's not like we're forcing anybody. It's not like we even have the power to force anybody to take the books. It's not, we don't have a devotee government yet, where, we can pass by law. Everybody has to have a set of Prabhupada's books.
Huh.
Uh, so yeah, we just try to convince people. Like, so, uh, yeah, listen, it's not, I'm not even sure we can force anybody
mm,
to take the books, right? If people really don't want them, they can just run away from us.
mm,
Uh, I don't know. Some devotees might be very fast and be able to run after them, but yeah, we just try to convince people. Okay. Any online comments or questions? Yeah,
when you're talking about like friends and enemies,
yeah.
there's like a very kind of violent, like explicit sense. Like, well, no, like if you, but like it was easy to understand that like, atheistic people can be very, install or one group versus another. How subtle can it get, especially in like a devotional community?
Mm.
Subtle can that like distinction become?
How subtle can the distinction between friends and enemies become? Yeah, it arises everywhere. That actually, until we are on the platform of uh, seeing everybody equally, that this idea of friends and enemies will uh, always come up or will tend to come up again and again. And yeah, I mean, a lot of times it comes up in devotee communities in the same way that it comes in non-devotee communities. Maybe not quite as like forcefully, because we're all devotees and we're supposed to be very gentle and Brahminical and everything. But it is still there. Uh, it can even arise like, oh, the same idea of these people are helping with my sense gratification, so I will like them, and these people aren't, so I won't like them. And generally, it comes up in the mood of fault finding that I'll see this devotees, and they aren't doing something the way that I like it to be done, or they're putting me on services I don't like, or something like that. And then this idea of I'm against them, or they're against me, comes. And then it can also happen that uh, you find somebody else in your community that feels the same way, and then a small group starts to form, and then you're really in danger. Because I've seen it happen before. What happens pretty soon after that is one person in that group goes away from devotional service. They bloop, as the lingo goes. And then another person in the group goes away. And they just fall like dominoes. Devotees who have been around a while might have seen this happen. Uh, that, yeah, if we, even as devotees, have this fault finding attitude and see other devotees in terms of friends and enemies, it's very dangerous for our spiritual life. Uh, so and it can come in very gross or subtle ways that, even just thinking, uh, trying to find faults with the devotees, is also an expression of this idea of friends and enemies. Uh, of course, sometimes, especially if, one is in a cultivation or management sort of thing, you have to kind of see, uh, things in order to make sure the service is being done well. But that's kind of different from an attitude of fault finding. Uh, so yeah, I mean, fault finding and this kind of clique mentality can be very dangerous for our spiritual life. Hopefully that was something of an answer. Okay, we have less than 1 minute left. So unless there's any extremely pressing, burning questions. All right, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Yeah.
Jaya Radha Rama Radha 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 Shri Radha Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Rama Jaya Shri Radha Jaya Radha Jaya Shri Radha Jaya Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Sri Radha Jaya Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Sri Radhe Jaya 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 Nitai Gora Sunda Nitai Gora Sunda Gora Hari Jaya Nitai Gora Sunda Nitai Sunda Gora Hari Jaya 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 Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya 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 Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Sri Guru Dana Padma Devanavati Sadam Shri Guru Charan Dana Namo Nagari, Krishna Krishna, Hare Srimad Gita, John Clark from Pakistan, first off, Trishi line there. They talk about hockey, try to come to my Pakistan says I will come on hockey. Quality. First thing, most secrecy change time, religion, tree, for example. Krishna Krishna Govinath Tamo Radha Giri Govardhanti. Kirtandanti, Radhanti, Yamunamaiti, Bhakti, Vastaviti, Anatha Vastaviti, Finance, Kirtanti, Samya Samavita Bhakti, Muktai, all much visible glory, all much visible glories, all much visible glories, all much tree, guru, tree, or which shall Prabhupada. The lotus feet are created in the only wisdom to superior versions of this. I bow with lotus feet, great power methods. By his grace, with the heart of wishes to materials of him, the Indian looks expression. Not only wishes have a notion spirit of words mitigating the suicide. The captain to the road of me, judgment to us all alive. The only good out that has anything on a tree in the world. He is like a refracted vision. From him sad freedom and needs, like that the innocent spirit. Related to the city of Satan. Ours are introductions, making mercy, good Lord of my bread and sins. Lord, as these systems of us. Give us the truth of his blessings. Your praise spread all over the universe. Give us the good of his blessing. So my grace is in God, not from my life to you, God. Lord, for you, your past, I will praise. And your words are so wonderful. So, yeah, it's so nice to me. I don't want to balance. Well, yeah, maybe, very nice. Okay, who's suddenly got it? Take on. Later on, we got the what do you call it? That's the stuff. Yeah, it's actually the last drop was in terms of like it was on the knee, wherever the room was. She just get out of the room. And then it's movement happening. And I was thinking, you touched on how much thoughts they use us. Then it just like, who had said all the moments once too. Well, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. So we're not sure. Are you having about this? Yeah. I'll be there in like 10 minutes. I don't know. I'm shower. I need to know. Yeah, I so I was doing that on this one. Okay, and then on the next.